In 2005, visual novel studio Innocent Grey released Cartagra Affliction of the Soul, starring ex-police officer Takeshiro Shugo as he tries to piece his life back together in post-World War II Japan, when suddenly a missing persons case is dumped onto him one day, involving the girl he had a relationship with before he set off to war. The story is set in Japan in the 50s. For anyone familiar with modern history, this was a particularly brutal time to be poor in Japan, as starvation and prostitution ran rampant, while the elite class continued to prosper. One of my favourite things about this visual novel was the effort put into this setting. It's not very often settings for a visual novel extend beyond a simple fictional town and school to an actual historical time period. Little details like the takoyaki seller being forced to discount his food, or the reality of the brothel behind the scenes, added so much depth and weight to the story, showing how brutal the world can be while grounding it in realism. The characters in Cartagra definitely fulfill their individual roles within the context of the story, but removed from the story there's very little that would make me relate to them or think about them. Cousin is perhaps the best example of this. While she can be endearing, I've seen this exact protagonist so many times now, she's practically indistinguishable. Toji's there to fill the role of the badass mentor, but her character's a bit too one-dimensional to work in this kind of supposedly deep and nuanced realistic story, which I suppose to an extent kind of extends to almost every character in the novel. Because of this, my favourite character was actually the villain, simply because he was a bit more developed as a character. And as a result of all the weaker characters, when they inevitably die, which they do as this is a horror series still, I just don't feel moved in any way. I just get a sense that that was their time to leave, so the story could progress to its next plot point. It is a little disheartening to see that such effort and detail was put into crafting a robust and realistic world, only for 2D cutouts to be placed inside of it. The plotting in Cartagra is quite well executed, but truthfully it doesn't really break any new ground. But I'd argue it's not really trying to either. The formula they use is to increase the number of clues and mysteries leading up to the story's conclusion, before throwing twist after twist in the final route, and it culminating in the ending. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's amateurish, but it's definitely something you've seen before if you've been playing visual novels for an extended period of time. This kind of tried and true plotting approach generally does lead to quite a satisfying conclusion, so I would consider myself a fan in this case. The soundtrack was a little above average, managing to establish and maintain the mood and atmosphere depending on the scene. Whether that mood was abject terror, a brief moment of calm, or the sneaking suspicion something bad is about to happen, the soundtrack did have a tune to deliver the emotions required. Outside of the context of the game, however, I can't really see myself listening to most of these tracks. The visuals from Innocent Grey were very well done, and the majority of the story takes place in winter, and so the backgrounds did a great job of bringing that season to life. The desolate feel of the city is particularly well done, the characters all have distinct looks and their sprites are attractive. And the CGs are also pretty well done. Sometimes the perspectives can look a little off, but the proportions are good. Toji had my personal favourite character design. I played the version of Cartagra translated by Manga Gamer and released in 2014. I found the team at Manga Gamer did quite a satisfactory job with the translation and localization, as I never felt like I missed out on any cultural cues, which is quite a feat considering the novel is a period piece. It would have been easy to miss small time period specific cultural details. The menu was quite standard, allowing me to play from the beginning, load a save file, edit the configuration, or exit the game. There's over 60 save slots as well as quick save and quick load, which I would consider quite standard for a visual novel. After completing the true route, you also unlock an extra menu, which allows you to view the CGs, H scenes, and listen to the soundtrack at your leisure, which is also pretty standard but quite a nice touch. Looking online, I see a lot of the complaints leveled at Cartagra essentially boil down to the fact that Shugo isn't really a detective character in the traditional sense. Instead, most of the hints and clues relating to the mysteries are provided by other characters, and it's up to you, the player, to connect the dots and ignore the red herrings so that you make the right choices. In a straight-up traditional mystery novel, this could be described as lazy or ineffective writing, as the detective character isn't really a detective at all. But I would argue in this visual novel, where there is a lot of gameplay elements, this isn't the case. Shugo's personal plot is that of a broken person trying to find peace in the world again, not some infallible Hercule Poirot type detective figure. To me, this was a far more interesting story, but I can understand the complaints as well, so I guess it's really more about your expectations heading into it. The H scenes can feel a little flat at times. There are 15 all up, but most of them appear out of nowhere with little context and do very little to develop the characters or the story. You can tell some of the scenes were written just to have that sex scene occur, so they stand out kind of awkwardly from the rest of the story. My final thoughts are, I would recommend this novel for horror and mystery fans, but not necessarily for everyone else. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of good ideas in Cartagra, but not all of them are actually fully expanded upon. Innocent Grey did have a lot of good ideas here, but unfortunately they didn't execute them as well as in future of their releases, such as Kara Shoujo and the Flower series. But for what it is, Cartagra does stand on its own as an enjoyable work in my opinion. If you're a fan of the genre, I'd say it's worth playing. I've included an affiliate link to the Manga Gamer website if you want to purchase Cartagra and play it yourself. There's also a trial version available for download, but be warned the website is 18+ and it's got quite a lot of graphic content from the out, so just keep an eye out and make sure that you're in a position where you can safely navigate it. Thank you for taking the time to check out this review. I've linked my blog down below if you'd like to check out some of my other views as well as some Vaporwave related content.